Welcome to SaaS Backwards, a podcast that helps SaaS CEOs and go-to-market leaders accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is Dave Boyce, Executive Chairman and EVP of Product at Winning by Design, a leading growth advisory firm for scaling businesses. From diagnostic insights to system design and deployment, its experts work with the world's most prominent brands to architect compounding growth. Hey, Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Ken, let's get it. I guess let's get it SaaS backwards today, right?
Let's get it right.
Let's get it right. It might be the opposite of that.
But before we dig in on the episode, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and your company, Winning by Design?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. And I don't need to spend a ton of time on it, but Ken, I built my career in SaaS. So I think we're both in the same podcast right now. I helped build and sell as an operator 5 SaaS companies, and then as an investor and advisor a few more. And even before the word SaaS existed, we had application service providers, we were hosting software in the cloud and even machine learning stuff. And so that goes back, for me to the early 2000s. But, we've had a great couple of years. We've seen some ups and downs, and Winning by Design is a place where a lot of us kind of operators have started taking kind of the patterns, like the pattern recognition, and trying to distill that into frameworks and first principles that can be used by operators to say, basically save time and benefit from first principle thinking as you're planning for the next stage of growth, the next stage of growth, and the next stage of growth. You don't want to be surprised at what's around the next corner. We don't have to be anymore because, this industry's been around for a while. That being said, and I'm sure we'll get into this, AI has changed a lot. So now we're just speeding up our learning cycles. And so Winning by Design, like you said, is an advisory firm. We publish research. We work on an advisory basis with kind of companies usually from 50 million in ARR up to about 2 billion. And there's a lot of tricky growth kind of transitions during that time.
Well, really excited to have you here. And as we discussed previously, big fan of some of the research work that you were associated with in prior jobs with InsideSales.com. Maybe we'll highlight the research you're doing at Winning by Design right here now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, we talked about it right before we went live, but this is a journal. It's designed to be kind of the Harvard Business Review for growth executives, and it comes out quarterly, full of research. This is literally the first edition, or the first issue, came out in October. Second one will come out this January, and it's free to subscribe to. Not in this form. This form costs, I think, $120. It's not expensive, but the digital form is free, and it's called Growth. And I believe every growth executive should be plugged into this.
Well, I was happy to publicize it only because I'm a big believer in research-based thought leadership. Happy to see you investing in that again.
Thank you, brother.
And I just think it's really important. So let's dig in a little bit. You've said that we are in the middle of a major shift from what I probably would think of as traditional marketing-led acquisition to self-service and AI-led activation. So what's changing in SaaS GTM? And why can't we rely on the marketing hands-off leads to sales model anymore?
Ooh, yeah, as with everything, it's a balance, but we are in a major shift. And I think it started 3 decades ago, and I think it's going to go 3 decades from now, if we can even see that far into the future. But, there are so many transactions now that are unmediated by a human. It started with e-commerce, where, we didn't think you could buy anything without a human. Oh, well, I guess you could buy a book. I guess you could buy a CD. Wait, but you'd never buy clothes. And now we're buying everything. Like, we're buying clothes and vehicles and homes. And then from e-commerce to kind of the cloud, then we started hosting kind of software in the cloud, and went, like we were talking about, from hosting providers to SaaS, then a good kind of push down to our mobile. Now, we make all sorts of purchases now via mobile. We're making business purchases. We're making personal purchases. And then SaaS kind of evolved to the point where it could be automated in like a PLG way, product-led growth. So now I can I can purchase applications like Dropbox, Canva, DocuSign, and I never even think about it, but it is software. And some of those evolve into big $1 million contracts. And now we've got AI that's even taking more, even handling more complexity. So I can I could purchase even more or configure even more complex things without a human involvement. So I think it's just a long-term trend towards self-service buying. And I was just in London with Forrester a couple months ago, and they released some new research. Says 2/3, I think they actually said 70% of B2B buyers today are either Gen Z or millennial. So if you think about that, Gen Z and millennial, and then you start thinking about like what's in their head, like how do they make decisions? And the CEO of Forrester said, so how many of us are willing to put our CEO in a short form TikTok video? How many of us are willing to feature our ad in in Fortnite? And those are, of course, that's a little extreme, but decision making is different for Gen Z and millennial. They're relying on peers, they're relying on self-service, they're relying on try before you buy. So these are all things that we have to enable if we want to meet buyers where they are. That's a long answer to a short question. I'm sure we'll get into more of it.
There's every generation, there's a generational shift, right? And we always have talked about the over under sale, as I call it. So there's like the executive that has to sign, but there's the people they rely on to tell them what they should do and buy.
Yeah.
And so those people keep getting younger as we keep getting older. And we have to definitely meet them where they are, create experiences that are consistent with their expectations and support the way they want to make decisions, right? So that's all up
Yeah.
for grabs.
I think it is up for grabs. And, we went from push-based marketing to pull-based marketing, or, HubSpot kind of revolutionized the inbound marketing and content marketing, got it. And then, we saw a lot, and HubSpot actually at that point was listening too. They're like, hang on a second, is inbound marketing the thing or is Shopify the thing? Because they're selling their software without a human involved at all. It's more than inbound marketing. It's like inbound trialing or inbound purchasing. So they were like, could we do that? And they actually made a really impressive push into PLG themselves. So yeah, we're all listening. We're meeting people where they are. I like the way you said that.
Yeah, totally we are. I remember, by the way, I was at the Inbound conference, I guess it was about 6 or 7 years ago, when HubSpot announced its ads software. Like,
Mm.
it was almost like irreligious that HubSpot would have an advertising component to the software. So I think we all have to meet the market where the market actually is if we want to get the revenue that the market has to offer.
Love it.
So I think that's a great place to leave that thought. But actually, I want to dig a little deeper. In the prep that you did with Jason, my colleague, you
Yeah.
mentioned that if one company is handing off leads, the kind of the old model, like a lead MQL, SQL kind of business, and another competitor is activating customers in their GTM, the one that's activating is going to win. So how should marketing, sales, and product teams rethink collaboration when activation is where acquisition happens?
Yeah. So that's what's at stake, Ken. Like I'm competing, I've fine-tuned my acquisition model. I've got a really cool kind of inbound marketing funnel that goes to a two-stage qualification and, SDR to AE handoff. It's all kind of finely tuned. And then I look over my shoulder and somebody else has none of that. My competitor has none of that. They're just saying, try for free. It's like, what? Like that's completely different. And then you flip it like we were talking about. You put yourself in the shoes of the person who's trying to make a decision about solution A or solution B. Solution A says, schedule an appointment and our SDR will talk to you and, unspoken subtext, qualify whether you're worthy to speak with or not. And then they'll hand you off to an AE. In other words, it's a form. And then solution B is like, hey, just get your hands on it, see if it might work for you. Which one would you do? And 9 times out of 10, we're going to say, you know what, if it's easy enough, let me just get my hands on it and see if it's going to work for me. So we see all sorts of industries being disrupted by that because it just matches the buying behavior that's expected by today's B2B buyers. And if we're in kind of column A and we're watching column B disrupt us, kind of shame on us. We got to get out in front of that. It's a call to a new way of doing business.
I think it's a real rallying cry for the industry. And it's not only the sales infrastructure, like the barrier. It also, there's a subtle message, I think, if we don't show the software in action, we don't make it easy to activate on our own, it sort of says to me, maybe that software isn't very easy to use. If
That's
I've
what
got,
you might have been in one of those companies. I certainly have. Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about, but certainly, the perception is if, you give me the keys and let me do the test drive on my own, I'm going to
Totally.
like it, right?
Totally.
If you make it really hard to get to the test drive, well, what is that about? So,
Yeah, it just conveys confidence. Like, yeah, here's the keys. Take it for a test drive. Whoa, you must be really confident. Hey, why don't we go back in my office and we'll show you some brochures and I'll talk to you about how great it will be once you have the car. Wait, why can't you just let me drive it? It's right over there. That's a lack of confidence.
absolutely. So that's a big change though, right? And I guess a question is, if we're going to adopt a PLG motion and we're going to layer on AI, what do we have to rethink? What's the changes we have to make, and where are the potential obstacles to
Yeah.
changing mode?
So the first thing, like Ken, I work with teams all over the world on this very kind of issue, and AI has kind of even brought it even more to the forefront, right? Like we're watching these crazy hyperscalers in the AI space, and we're realizing that Cursor and Lovable and Replit and Mistral, they're all going from 0 to 100 to 500. In some cases like OpenAI to 2 billion in revenue. And when you go to their website, you're not filling out a form to be contacted by a salesperson. You're not. You're just signing up for their service, and you can get a decent amount of the way forward into an enterprise license without talking to a human. Now, at some point, all of these teams have sales teams. When I work with teams around the world, the first thing that we kind of just have to unlock is this doesn't mean that we don't have humans on the front line speaking with customers. It does not mean that. Like, you know, Anthropic and OpenAI and all of these companies, they actually have what they call forward deployed engineers, essentially CSMs, but very technical, who are on the front lines helping you understand and with sleeves rolled up, helping you understand how to activate use cases within their software and drive more utilization. Got it. So there are enterprise salespeople at Cursor, there are enterprise salespeople at Canva, like all of these big kind of PLG companies, they have enterprise salespeople. But what we have to change is our thinking about where and when do we deploy one of our humans. There's a woman named Joanna. I can't say her last name. She's Polish. She's an author of Poland. She says, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing. I don't want AI to do my art and writing so that I can do laundry and dishes. So we apply that to kind of how we think about rethinking our go-to-market. Do we really want our frontline salespeople processing renewals or training on the features of the software or running demos? These are all extremely repeatable processes. Like a demo can run itself now, especially with AI. Training can run itself as well. Renewals are literally just a click of the button. You already have the terms, you already have the contract, you already have the configuration. It's just like accept terms, go. We don't need humans in all of those roles. That would be like laundry and dishes stuff. So if we can rethink what's automatable and turn that over to the machines and elevate our humans to do the stuff that's not automatable, that's more human, which is like use case generation, ROI, like business case validation, stakeholder management, that would be the ideal. Then we're running as fast as we can on the automatable stuff, and we're being as human as we can on the bespoke stuff.
Yeah, I've also seen some firms actually take the forward deployed engineer model as either a revenue opportunity or a partner revenue opportunity. So either they
Yeah.
take it in-house and they use it, to ensure a better experience so that they'll deploy them maybe free for a while, then paid, or they'll
Yep.
put the partners in that role, which helps them with their adoption in the enterprise as well. So I think there's
Totally.
a lot to work through what the opportunities are once you really have a great PLG motion. The other thing about the enterprise, the PLG to enterprise is I think that there's a great opportunity for salespeople to accelerate their processes, right? Because right now, like traditional enterprise sale takes a really long time. You have to find people willing to think about it. There's an awful lot that goes into getting the sale off the ground. Whereas if it's grow from departmental or disparate implementations to an enterprise sale, it's a lot easier to say to somebody, hey, you got 300 people in 25 groups using the software, let's have a chat. That's a very different kind of conversation than, trying to
And the
knock
cold,
on a closed door, right?
like yeah, we're not going to close. I love that. And I've never met, Ken, I've never met, as scary as it sounds, I've never met a enterprise salesperson who's gotten involved in that situation where they're helping scale impact versus knocking on closed doors. Never met an enterprise salesperson that's joined a PLG company who will ever go back
Yeah.
to closed door knocking. Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's like the ultimate, it's not even a warm lead anymore. This is, hot stuff, and
Yeah.
obviously you have offers to help grow the enterprise sale, right? You're using it, your users love it. Why isn't everybody doing this? It's a very different life.
The CRO for, he's not the CRO anymore, but he was until just, I think, a year and a half ago at Atlassian, a big PLG company. He used to say it this way, Ken. He used to say, I won't let my salespeople talk to non-customers. You're
Love
like,
it.
wait a second, how do you get new customers then? Exactly what you just described. No, they're talking to existing customers who self-serve their way into a certain amount of positive impact. And now when the salesperson shows up, and by the way, he doesn't even call them salespeople, he calls them customer advocates. But now when that person shows up, they're not, what can I sell you? They're, how can I help you?
Yeah, very different lifestyle, corporate experience. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
I want to dig a little bit more, and I'm gonna give you an opportunity to talk about some other thought leadership in your book, Freemium.
yeah,
You kind of highlight that AI and usage-based pricing are removing friction from onboarding. And I haven't heard that before. I've heard people trying to talk about the selling impact of usage-based pricing, like getting people's minds to kind of get through that. But tell me about how usage-based pricing actually helps onboarding. That's a new one to me, and I'd love to understand what
yeah.
you're seeing.
First of all, I don't think we know enough. We talked at the top of the show about first principles thinking and framework thinking. I don't think we have a working kind of universal kind of field theory about usage-based pricing. There are a lot of people pushing the envelope right now. I think MongoDB is doing a really good job. I think, a lot of these AI companies are doing a really good job. But what we've seen kind of from early and definitive forays into it is, if I can just get my hands on something and I don't need to commit to a minimum of, I'm making this up, $15,000 a year, I can be deploying an enterprise kind of worthy use case. That's just lower friction. So I'm going to scale it down to kind of like, personal use. Like, you started using Claude. You didn't use it, thinking that you were eventually going to be on an enterprise license. You're just using it to solve problems. You find out that it can solve enterprise level problems. You click up into, the pro version. You might even click up into an enterprise version to get access to certain features. You might be using Claude code, and you might at some point say, you know what, this is robust enough that I could deploy this across all of my colleagues. And now I'm in a different conversation. But if I had told you, hey, our enterprise version of Claude, including Claude Code and all the stuff that you're going to want to use, starts at $15,000 a year, that's just a different conversation. So it does blur the lines between sales and onboarding, but I've essentially onboarded myself into the use case, into usage. In PLG, we talk about developing habit. And in a very real way, if we can, we'll help you develop a habit around using our software or our product or our service to help you achieve impact in your company. We'll help you develop a habit even before we ask you for money. And or maybe we're asking you for kind of usage based, but even before we ask you for an enterprise kind of down payment.
Right. Like the money that's asked early on it's sort of, we used to call it beer money, right? I mean, it's
Yeah,
not
there you
really
go.
important money, right?
Yeah.
I guess, I was going to ask you, like, how do you like trial test this motion? But it almost seems like it's too different to be able to like test a PLG motion if you're
Like,
coming at it from a traditional model. So how does a SaaS leader approach, hey, I believe it, I think it would be right, but I'm living in the, the seat-based world. How
yeah,
do I get there?
yeah. Well, Ken, here's where your listeners can learn from my mistakes, because I've done this wrong. In my opinion, if you want to build whatever you're going to be doing, so let's broaden our minds and PLG is great. It's a great thing to hold on to. I called my book freemium because it's a great thing to hold on to. Both of those concepts are smaller than the general trend towards self-service or the general trend towards automating go-to-market. So let's just broaden our minds and think about automation. Now I'm in a SaaS company and I think to myself, what should I automate? I generally don't think the first thing I want to automate is user acquisition and onboarding. It's very hard to do. It takes a while. It takes 1.5 to 3 years to get that right. To your point, it's very hard to test that against sales. And I'm barely going to see anything move on the ARR y-axis in time for, before I lose interest. But what if I could automate something adjacent to what I'm doing? Like in my current business, like what if I could automate, we use the example of renewals, or what if I could automate expansion, like an expansion sale? Again, I have all the configuration done, all the contract terms done. I just need to add new servers or seats or locations or whatever my kind of scale metric is. That could be an automated kind of click, accept terms. Now it sounds easy. You actually have to build that in. There's got to be a portal. There's got to be kind of permissioning. There's got to be connections into your backend system. You got to actually build the user interface so that it is intuitive. You got to build triggers so that you get it in front of the right people at the right time. There is a lot that goes into that, but you've got a fighting chance of succeeding within a relatively short amount of time. And you can just automate pieces that you used to throw humans at. As soon as you get that right, you're going to get addicted to it. You're going to start moving upstream and downstream and automating everything you can.
Yeah, we had another podcast guest on. His episode isn't even published yet. And he talked about two kinds of problems. He talked about salad problems and brownie problems. So the salad problem is one where if you get 80% of it right, it's still a salad, right? If you don't put the anchovies in the Caesar salad, it could still be a Caesar salad. But, hey, if you don't put the eggs in brownies, they come out like bricks, right?
Okay.
80% is not a good solution. Sounds to me like the upgrade, renewal, expansion sale is kind of a salad problem. We could try part of it and get it right and get some muscles and build on our initial learnings. And I think that's pretty exciting little observation. I really appreciate it. I want to kind of move on, right? We said it was going to be a little bit of a lightning round just because we had so much to cover.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So I want to talk about, AI content tools and, what makes it possible to really lean in to AI-based content generation. And you've said that in your research, you found that really only works when ICP, persona, corporate voice, and more are really deeply encoded, I think, within the organization as well as the tool. So how can we make sure that AI helps us scale high quality content rather than, kind of slop?
I think you probably know way more about this world than I do, Ken. Cast your mind back to when we used to hire agencies for content. I know we still do, but you hire agencies for content. You write a brief, you get it to the agent, you get, concept proposals back, you go back and forth, you look at it, you refine it, you come down to the one that you want to lean into. It's a kind of weeks long process, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. Okay, cool. In theory, AI can do that in a heartbeat. Like you just put a prompt into OpenAI or to ChatGPT, and you get some content. But there's no way. You and I both know that I don't want marketer A doing that with ChatGPT and marketer B doing that with Claude and marketer C doing that with Mistral, and just having it kind of like accelerate volume but not ensure quality. There was a reason we wrote that brief when we handed it off to our agency, because we were thoughtful about it. We had an ICP in mind. And so if I want to scale, if I want to get the benefits of kind of speed that come out of AI, as well as the thoughtful benefits of like programming it, I got to have some sort of kind of guardrails in there. So there are solutions out there for AI content generation that allow you to do that strategy work and then let that strategy work be inherited by each subsequent product or project. So think about like the ICP that I defined is, I can select that for project B and project C and project D. The voice that I defined, I can select that for subsequent projects. And then even though the form is different or the ask is different or the content is different, it's still going to follow essentially like my brand guidelines. And that's the difference between kind of ad hoc use of Gen AI for content generation and more systematic use of Gen AI for content generation at scale.
I think that's a great explanation. I really appreciate it. And it's like the creative brief was really training the agency, right?
Yeah,
So you would
right.
have this whole training exercise
Yes.
when you onboarded an agency. You know, it'd take a few months, right? You have to learn the brand voice, you have to learn the design constructs, you have to meet the people that are running the programs and understand their preferences. So maybe what we could say here is we're kind of compressing the amount of time it takes to train the AI agency, right? It could become your agency at a prompt. So the fundamentals haven't changed, but maybe the tool set has
The
changed, right?
tool set's changed. And it's the same with, we think about an AI agent being a frontline salesperson. Okay, that doesn't mean you don't have to train and manage and coach it. Just because it's a robot doesn't mean it doesn't need training, managing, and coaching. Just because your content agent is a robot doesn't mean it doesn't need training, managing, and coaching. It's not just magic. Like you got to actually program it and set the parameters. I love that.
So all of this new world is awesome, but we still meet CROs and heads of sales and marketing who are being held to kind of previous era metrics. They've got the predictable revenue model metrics being asked for by their board or C suite. So, how do GTM teams and their management change how they're measured? I'm a big fan of Kyle Poyar. I don't know if you read his stuff,
Yeah, for sure.
but he's calling for a very different look at what that go to market looks like and is measured. How do you coach your clients to rethink what they're measuring and how they're going to be able to predict their own success?
Yeah, Kyle's a great guy. I love the way he thinks. I actually don't think the metrics need to change per se, Ken. I mean, Winning by Design has a pretty well-known model called the bow tie model. It's a data model for how, a customer moves through the various stages of consideration and purchase, and then how it opens back up into the right, what we call the right-hand side of the bow tie, which is, onboarding, adoption, retention, and expansion. Those are the phases of a customer journey, no matter what. Now, whether I'm doing a predictable revenue thing and handing off from an SDR to an AE in the front half of that journey, or whether I'm doing an inbound thing, or whether I'm doing a PLG thing, or whether I'm doing an enterprise thing, I can still measure it the same way. But I think, Ken, once we have that data model in place, what we want to measure is a go-to-market motion against peer go-to-market motion. So I think what Kyle often said, he publishes PLG benchmarks. So I'm not comparing a PLG company to an SMB company or an enterprise company. I'm comparing a PLG company to a PLG company. Those benchmarks weren't available before. They still follow basically those same phases, same conversion rates, kind of moving down the journey. But yeah, we got to get out of this mindset where the board says, hey, I'm used to seeing SQL, MQL, SQL opportunity close, and I'm used to seeing them at these rates. Okay, got it. But we're running a different business. When I sat down with Kyle, he's like, when you sit in a PLG board meeting, it feels so different than when you sit in an SLG board meeting. You sit in a sales-led board meeting, it's all about how big is the pipeline, how much sales capacity do we have, how can we get these over the line. When you sit in a PLG board meeting, it's like, okay, well, we hit what we said we were going to hit. We could amp it if we want to goose marketing a little, or we don't have to goose marketing, but the flywheel is doing all the work. So it's like a low stress. Hitting this quarter's number is a low stress activity, whereas hitting this quarter's number is a high stress activity in a sales led company.
I want to go to the right side, I guess, of the bow tie with you
Cool. Yeah.
and talk about, life cycle marketing as a maybe an overlooked growth lever. So how can we, activate our users as an audience who could become advocates for us? From
Yeah.
your point of view, what does a strong life cycle marketing look like?
I know we're in lightning round mode, Ken, and we could spend all day on this, but just if you just think about every one of your customers is a collection of users. And every one of those users has experience with your product or service. And when we talked at the top of the show about Gen Z and millennials consulting with their peer networks for advice on, what the right solution would be, guess who those peers are? They're the users of your solution. So if the users of your solution are sharing with their peers, that's a good place to be. then you've got wind in your sails, and that can drive compounding growth. If the users of your solution have been neglected, or they're getting treated poorly, or they don't actually even have the opportunity to share, those could all be things that basically you're just playing beneath your privilege. So what I like to do, Ken, is pave those natural paths that already exist. Like, I want to make it easy for a happy user of the solution to share with her peers. So I want to get her on stage. I want to get her a platform. I want to get her into a room with her peers. I want to actually show up where she is with her peers, or get her the stories that she needs, or get her the tools that she needs. Anything that would help her share the story, or anything that would help new users see that cool kids are over there, people like me are over there. I actually want to pave those paths. And again, it's the same as what you said before. It's way different than knocking on a closed door at this point. It's literally using the momentum that I already have in my user base to go generate more users and pull them in this case, on a warm basis, but not on a cold basis.
That's great. Thank you. And you're right. We're skipping rocks over the pond here at this
Yeah.
point. And I'm going to give you the last one.
Okay.
So we're near the year end. So if SaaS leaders rethinking their go-to-market as they're looking ahead to next year, what's the one change that you think would have the biggest impact for firms you might meet? And I realize this is a really broad set of humanity that you might meet, but what are you seeing for 2026? What's important?
Yeah. So we have to get ourselves in a systems thinking mindset, because systems scale. People do not scale. Systems scale. So now I'm not literally saying, even though I think this is true, I'm not literally saying like bits and bytes scale, and cellular organisms don't scale. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, even if you have a people-based operation, you want it to be running on a system. You want it to be defined by defined processes, defined metrics, like you said before, defined and repeatable things. This does get to the kind of repeatable revenue methodology, but I do want to know, if I'm running a people-based operation, I want to know that it's running on a system. And then anywhere I can, I want to actually automate pieces of that. So once I have it defined, I want to automate pieces of that. And I want to think about this as a system. So in the past, when we were doing 2026 planning, we might say, oh, we need to hit X revenue or bookings number. Therefore, I need, divide by ACV. I need Y number of reps. We got Q number of reps right now. So that means I got to hire these reps. They have a lead time. Boom. Now solved, right? No, there's so much more to it. What system are those reps running? And does the system output produce better system input? The way you were talking about with lifecycle marketing, right? Like, so it's not just the left side of the bow tie, it's the left and the right side of the bow tie as a system, self-reinforcing. That means I, as a revenue leader, have got to kind of up my game into systems mindset and think about all aspects of it, not just the linear kind of sales capacity planning model.
That's awesome. Well, that's a great place to land our episode. Thank you so much, Dave Boyce, for joining us. If people want to learn more about winning by design or reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, amazing. Well, winningbydesign.com is easy. We give a lot of stuff away. You can, like I said, you can sign up for the journal and get involved in our Growth Institute. I am active on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I have a Substack. It's just Dave Boyce, and I've got a newsletter, and I'd love to connect with you there.
That's awesome. And if folks want to reach me, I'm on LinkedIn/in/Ken Lempit. My advertising and demand generation for software companies is Austin Lawrence Group. We're at austinlawrence.com. And if Dave Boyce hasn't convinced you, you should be subscribing to the SaaS Backwards podcast. I'm not sure who will. Dave Boyce, thanks so much for being here.
Let's do it. Thank you so much.